How about that? Is that working? Is the microphone working? Can anybody hear me? Is this working? Is anybody here? Doesn't look like it. It's just me talking to myself. Oh wait, there's some eyeballs. Anybody watching? Anybody here? What do people want to know? What do you want to talk about? What's anybody? I see 3 eyeballs. What do people want to know? Talk to me. Ooh. Niket is here. What's up? What would you like to know?
Wait, Dad, are you in your meeting still?
Oh! Pierre? Pereira? Sorry. Yes, background job. What would you like to know? Like the theory behind it, why we did it, or like sort of technically how it works? I mean, some of the theory is, there's really no way in the Jamstack to do anything asynchronously. You can call Lambda. Ooh, here we go. Okay, yeah, so you can call Lambda, and you can call it now, but that's it. Daniel mentioned an asynchronous Lambda thing, but I haven't been able to find what that is yet, so I'm still looking at that. But the idea is, you just have this it's Ruby on Rails, and there's a very famous gem for it. Gem is what Ruby calls packages. In Ruby, they're called gems, and it's called delayed job. So I guess I can share my screen and show some of this stuff instead of just seeing my face. Let's see, is that working? Okay. Yeah, so there's this delayed job server, and it just runs in the background. And it just periodically pings the database. Anything to do, anything to do, anything to do. And it has a database field or record that calls delayed jobs. There's nothing in here right now. But it keeps track of these records on its own. So delayed job is constantly pinging this table, anything new, anything new, anything new. And if there is, it locks it. So it has this locked at. It puts its own name in there. Every worker has a little name, locks it, runs the job, and then assuming the job is successful, it clears it out and it's done. If it fails, you can also have it record the fact that it failed here in the job, and it marks the attempts and increments it by 1. And then it's just like a back off. So I think it's like n to the 4th squared or something, however many runs. So it'll try to run it 24 times, and it backs off every time. So I think by the time it gets to the 24th run, it will wait like 10 days before it gets to the 24th run, something like that. And then the 25th run, it just gives up. And then same thing with sort of the recurring job is a plugin delayed job recurring. And if once a job completes, it then reschedules it for whatever the next period instance is. So Rails is acting as the GraphQL interface to create jobs, the job table. And then when a job is created, assuming the job is enabled, it has this one here, assuming it's enabled, it also schedules a delayed job to run at some point in the future. Yeah, and then when it runs, it records the result, status, any headers and body that was in the response, and it'll call to an HTTPS URL anywhere on the internet. And in our case, we're probably going to call other functions in Redwood that are also in AWS Lambda. So just like you could call that function yourself from your own code, this server is going to call it from somewhere else on the internet. It is running on AWS RDS Aurora, which is I'm using the MySQL variant of Aurora, which is supposedly 5 times more performant than MySQL itself, but it's a completely MySQL compatible interface. So you can just use any kind of MySQL library to talk to it. It's a medium-sized instance. It allows, I forget the connections, hundreds of connections. It's running on one EC2 instance right now, which is also a medium, a T3 medium. So it's like burstable. So if you had a ton of traffic all of a sudden, supposedly it can get more resources if it needs to. And the nice thing with delayed job is you can kind of scale it horizontally because you can keep adding more and more and more workers. And the database doesn't care as long as you don't go over the connection limit. And then if the database itself starts getting bogged down and can't respond fast enough, then you can sort of scale that database vertically. And you can get pretty far with that. But I guess if you needed to, then eventually you could sort of separate by, I call them applications. So a user on Repeater creates any number of applications, and the application gets a unique token. That's the token you would use from like your Redwood app to actually communicate to the service. So you could probably start sharding that database and have, apps whose tokens start with A through M go to database 1, and any tokens that start with N through Z go to database 2. And now you have your two separate databases with their own pools of workers running. So you should be able to scale it pretty well with that default setup. Let's see, he asked if I can show the schema of the jobs table. Yes, so let me go back to this database real quick, and then I'll get to that next question. So if you go to the structure of jobs, here's the structure here. So you have the ID, you have the application that owns the job, the name of the job, and that's the unique identifier for anybody else. These should all be UTF. I don't know why these are Latin. I'll have to look at that. Enabled true or false, the verb, the HTTP verb to use when you call the endpoint. Endpoint's here. Any body you want the endpoint is just plain text. So if you need this to be JSON, then in your headers, you would say content type is JSON. Otherwise, most services are going to interpret this as just plain text. Run every is how you repeat. That uses that ISO 8601 duration string. Run at is the time you want it to run. And if it's a recurring job, it's the time you want it to run. Like the first instance will run now, and then it'll recur every whatever day after that. This is something coming for the future. You can have a named queues and priority. So maybe that's a potential thing if this ever becomes like a service, a paid service, then maybe if you're on a pro account, your priority is above anyone on a free account. So in theory, if there were 100 jobs that needed to run and you had 10 of those, you could make sure your 10 ran before the other 90, for example. Retryable is if the job fails, you want to retry it. Otherwise, just it fails and that's it. You never try again. And this is just sort of internal Rails stuff created at and updated at. What was that next question? Christopher. Oh, hey, Chris. You have a question about generators. Yes, please jump in. I think anyone can jump in at any time. I don't think it's moderated. You can try just asking to join. It might just let you in.
Hello.
Hey, it worked. What's up?
Hey, there we go. So I've been using Redwood and the generators a lot, and the one thing I notice most is customizing the generator. So I just wanted to chuck something back and forth. So obviously you use your generators to say you want to SDL, the scaffolding, everything, right? And it will give you like a set of Tailwind boilerplate, right?
Yeah.
So that all good. But then the flow that I keep feeling, because my application has a lot of forms, is then I'm tweaking it to then fit the layout, the correct way I've got the tables, because using React tables, for example. And something that just keeps going around in my head is, could we like have the ability to shadow the generator files? So say you use the default file and then say, okay, instead of using this Tailwind CSS, I want to put in React tables, blah, blah, blah. And then every time you run that generation code, it would then have the updated layouts.
Yeah, so that's I don't know if that's officially on the roadmap, but I think there's an open issue for it to allow you to customize generators. So it would be like in your local app, if you had generator / scaffold, and then as long as the path was the same, it would use that one instead of using the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's coming soon, but I have no idea on a release date on that.
No idea when. Everything moves so fast, it could literally be next week at this rate.
That's true. Yeah, we are moving pretty fast these days. Let me see.
Literally, I feel like I've disappeared for a week. Still been working on, obviously, my Redwood application. It's like, so many things have happened.
I know.
So many.
And Peter he's got all the Storybook stuff working, which is amazing, but he was trying to demo it and there's a bug with it. He can't quite get past it, but that would have been a whole nother world of
yeah, it's It's crazy. The only thing I'm still a bit jumpy on is the TypeScript support. Still a bit jumpy in places, such as obviously I forgot his name now. Has been working on the debug command, diagnosis command,
Oh
and
yeah,
it brings up like 100 problems in my application because it's all TypeScript.
really?
Yeah, so I think I might give him a screenshot saying everything works, everything compiles, but here's 100 problems.
Yeah, I'm not up on TypeScript either, so I like have no idea, and I'm not involved in those TypeScript conversions.
Yeah,
So
no.
people do it.
But it's just that thing of the generators because obviously I feel like the generators speed me up, but then I'm slowing down because I have to then customize
Right.
all the paths. I know. So and the reason I say the shadowing because of Gatsby. So say if you use a default theme, you can then, as long as you copy the file structure, it will then use your file over it.
Right.
So it might be worth looking into how they've done it in their internal packages
Okay.
to move this forward. But yeah, that was literally my question, and because obviously you're the king guru of generators.
Yeah, I don't. I'm actually
Yeah.
looking at the issues now. I don't see an open issue for it unless the comment was inside of another one. But I could have thought for sure we had because we have an issue on about converted into plop, which I guess
Yeah, because plop is the other alternative to obviously
Yeah,
do that.
I think we had maybe it was in here we had discussion about would it be easier to customize them once we were using plop, and then this thread sort of died out and no one's talked for a month or so.
It's funny because a lot of it's the core contributors.
I know, right?
Yeah.
From off the top of my head, because it seems like what we do now is we just assume we're always going to look in the internal Redwood. It's like CLI / command / generate / like scaffold / templates. So we always just look in there. So I think as long as we look in your local app first, we have access to that. We have a get paths function that'll reference your local app. So we just say if look for that file, if that file exists, use it. Otherwise, use the template one.
Yeah. So what I would think is you'd run a command to duplicate it locally. So duplicate the one that's from the Redwood path, and then obviously you could then see all the customizations, and then plop in your customizations, and then obviously the shadow path when you do the generators, it will say, okay, can I see it in his local file path structure? Yes, try and use that file. If not, default back to the original one.
Yes, that would actually not be that hard to do.
Because at the end of the day, I guess it's a bit like, I know it's not handlebars, but the whole thing of like, as long as the correct variants are in the correct places,
right,
it doesn't matter what you put around the HTML structure you put around it. I think that could really save one of the biggest nags that I have with the generators right now. Really.
Okay. I'm going to add an issue.
That's my thought. Yeah.
To look into that. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably not going to be that hard to do. Let me.
No. Because obviously the default generators are great to get going. I remember Dan speaking with Danny's demo, and he was saying that he used the generators, but then he swapped out all the default Tailwind code for the Ant layout code.
Okay.
So it's that thing. If he then wanted to run the generators again, he would then also have to do the whole replacement again. So right. I think that might help. The only problem is where do you say in the tutorial to do this? It's I guess it's more of an advanced thing to do after the tutorials of customizing the generators.
Right.
Yeah. That's. I didn't know if it was something you've thought about, but it's.
Well, I knew we wanted to do it, but I never really thought into like the details of doing it. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually kind of easy. So maybe.
Yeah.
What's your name on GitHub again?
It's just Burnsy, BURNSY. Because obviously, I think as long as we have the first command saying I want to like duplicate the ones local, either all of them or just one of them, because obviously you probably only want to customize the UI code. You really don't want to customize like the SDL one, for example.
Right.
I think as long as it's pretty straightforward, so you understand you're replicating it, and then anything in this anything in this folder structure will work. The only question is, what's the best way in terms of folder structure? Are we then going to have like API, web, and generators? So you duplicate so in the main directory, you have a folder then called generators that obviously has your customized code in.
Right.
But say if you was to use packages that are obviously included in the web, they wouldn't then have access to them. So you'd then have to, so in theory, you would have to host it, I think probably something like web/generators. Because then if you was to use npm packages that are specified in the web package.json, then it should be able to have access to them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. I created that issue. I CC'd you on it, so I'm going to look into that.
Yeah.
Or if you want to look into it, feel free.
Well, yeah. I feel, literally. I literally had my birthday last weekend, my partner's birthday this weekend. The United Kingdom's leaving COVID, so everyone wants to start meeting and doing things and going places. Obviously, social distance and everything, but it's just a bit crazy sometimes, as you know.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks. I'll jump out and leave everyone else to think about things.
All right.
Thanks for your time, Rob.
Yep.
See you later.
See ya. Niket, if you're still here, if you want to see how the records are locked, let me share my screen again. And I'll go back to the database. So there's two things the job owner will look at, and I can actually show you the actual query. It runs to say when the delayed job, these background jobs are querying any jobs, they're looking at a run at that's now or in the future, and they're looking that it's not already locked. So when a job locks it, he puts his own worker's name in this field, and then it knows. I'm sorry, locked by is the name. Locked at is the time when it got locked. So it's looking at locked by is null, and I believe that run at is now or in the future. And if I take a look at log into the remote server here and tail the logs that's actually running, the live one. Repair current. You'll see here, so this pane every couple of seconds. There's 4 workers right now, so all 4 workers are constantly checking for new jobs. But you can see here, it tries to update. It does an update query, which will return the ones that have changed, if any. So by default, this is returning nothing. But it's saying, okay, set delay jobs locked at to this time. Locked by is me. So here's delay job host number 0. Here's host number 2. Where run at is greater than now, and locked at is null, or locked at is less than now, I guess. No, less than like 4 hours ago. So that might be like a backup check, like maybe if a job is running for too long and someone else will pick it up. Or locked by is myself and I haven't failed. So I guess if I locked it but I didn't put a date in, then there might have been some bug with locking. And as long as it hasn't failed, go ahead and start running it. And this guy will take his turn around. And you can see there it's ordering by priority. So that's how it gets those. The lower the priority number, the faster it runs. So priority 0 will run before anything. And then it sorts it by run at ascending. So he'll pick off as many as he needs to run. And then the next worker number 2 tries the same thing. Worker number 3 tries the same thing. So yeah, did that help at all? Ooh. Yes, so they run. So delayed job runs within the context of the Rails app. So it basically boots up the Rails app and it's running it's in memory ready to go. And then as the jobs come off the queue, it just runs them through that in-memory instance of Rails. So anything in your Rails app you have access to from the delayed job. And you can look at that gem if you go to here and look at collective idea / delayed job. If you really want the nitty gritty of how it works, it's all in here. They have special work doing for sending Rails mailers, which I'm not using, but they have kind of some special syntax for that. And of course, this is more geared towards enqueuing these jobs from within a regular Rails app. I'm only enqueuing them from this API, this GraphQL API. So some of this some of these documentation probably doesn't apply. There's hooks like before and after, if it succeeds, if it fails. And here it talks about the database table. All right. Any more questions from anybody? Background jobs or data migrations or anything else, Redwood? Actually, talk about whatever you want. Looks like all the fun is probably happening in the after party, not over here. This is pretty quiet. Yeah, it would be nice to have them built into Redwood, but I don't know how you would do that, right? Because the CDN is just static. That's not going to do anything for you. And the Lambdas want to just run as fast as possible and close. I think the maximum runtime is only like, what, 30 minutes? So I don't know how you would schedule something to run past that point only using Lambda. Unless, like Daniel said, there's this asynchronous Lambda thing. I found this, which I didn't get to read the docs on yet. I'll link to it here in the chat. This is called AWS Lambda tasks, but that might not be it at all. That's just the first thing I found when I searched for like Lambda asynchronous. Yeah, SQS, we'd have to look into that if we really wanted like something super scalable. But again, that wouldn't really be in Redwood itself, right? You would somehow need to like at build time integrate with that queue and put jobs on that queue. And then you'd have to have an AWS account and yada, 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 unless Netlify added support for that. So that's the thing with Repeater. We're trying you don't have to sign up for like Amazon and figure out how AWS works to get your queues working. It's just sort of, just like Netlify, like you create a Netlify account and then it just sort of magically works. We're kind of want to do something very similar if we can. It'd be nice if Netlify themselves add the support. Maybe if Repeater is amazing enough, they'll acquire it in some way and then they'll integrate it into their system. I believe they actually run Ruby behind the scenes. Yeah, it's not technically Jamstack, right? But it's kind of like the database. Like the database right now, and there's no database that's really the Jamstack. I guess, what's the one? What's the one that starts with an F? Fauna. I guess they're pretty close, but they're not just regular SQL, right? It's like their own custom syntax, and Tom is not excited about that syntax. He wants it to be, right, super, super simple. So anytime you're kind of using, a third-party service, I guess it's not technically a Jamstack. Like if you want to send email, right, there's no, as far as I know, there's no like Jamstack way to send email other than sign up for like SendGrid and you just make an API call to send your email, which you can do as long as you as long as you want to send the email right now, you can do that fine, just fine today. It's when you need to send it later is the issue. Anybody else? I see 3. Well, maybe that's Chris and Dickett. Maybe. Any other questions? Let me know. We got 14 minutes left. Yeah, to be called full stack Redwood needs something for background jobs. Yeah, I mean, we would definitely want to do like with this Repeater thing, and maybe there'll be other services at some point in the future that kind of like auth Redwood would have, its own way to integrate with those services. So it's just a one-line function call from your service. Right now, I can actually show you my code in Conway. Service, the background job service that talks to Repeater. Where is it here? And this is just another service, and this is an interesting problem, right? We have Apollo, and we have Apollo client on the web and Apollo server on the API. But if you need your API, your service, to act as a GraphQL client, you can't really do that right now. By default, right? You could bring in Apollo client, but then you're bringing in all this caching, all this extra stuff. You probably, in this case, I don't need that at all. So I found this one, which is coincidentally also by Prisma, GraphQL request. And it's just a really lightweight GraphQL client. So I'm using this in this service, the background job service, right? This is API source services, background jobs. And he sets up a client. Here's my 2 queries. I'm either going to create or update. That's an item potent 1, or I'm going to delete a job. And so I'll call create background job from my contact service. Every time I create a contact or update a contact, I say if the contact has a reminder on it, then call create background job. Contact reminder, create background job, and then create background job is this guy, create background job. He's going to set up some variables. Here's the name of the job, the body, which is that contact that I'm going to need when it calls back to my function. Here's that URL to the function I need to call, and then when to run is whenever the reminder's time is. So then I just make that request, and then assuming it works, I'm done. Otherwise, I'll console error, cannot create background job. And you'll see that reflected like in your logs. Or you could delete a job. So like if you delete a contact, I say, once the contact is deleted, not delete any potential background jobs that are waiting on this contact because it no longer exists and we'll never get email reminders about it. So in theory, there should be some way I could roll this up into an easy built-in Redwood function. So maybe you can just call create background job from any service, and you just pass it. Presumably Redwood can probably figure out the name for you, and the body and the endpoint would be custom, right? Whatever function you create, and then whatever data that function ends up needing, you need some way to like codify that and give it to the background job, and then you just give it the time to run at. And then also if it's a recurring job, you have to give it the string of when to recur. So I could roll this up into RedwoodJS / background or something, and make this a really nice Redwood-like interface to be able to create background jobs. And then like this one works with Repeater, but maybe then EasyCron has an API, or any of these other services that come online, or if there eventually is if there is a real Jamstack way to do this without relying on the third-party service, we could just make a wrapper for that one as well, and then you can just use them all from within Redwood, just like you do auth now. Like it'll generate and then make your function calls. Yeah, it seemed like a very easy way to do it. Like those functions are already exposed to the internet somewhere, and of course you can't call anything from the CDN. That's not a process that's waiting to run code for you, right? It's read only basically. So you kind of have to call Lambda functions. It's really the only way you can do it. And those are sitting out there in the world ready to go. And you need to come up with some way to secure it. Like right now, these aren't secure. Like basically anybody could call send reminder. If they knew that body, they could send a reminder about any contact they wanted. So I'll probably come up with some way to like have a secret token that only ever lives in like environment files. So it's never in the code base. If you were inspecting your code, you could like sneak out the token. And then you'd give that token to the background job in the body or in a header, an authorization header, to make sure it gets sent in. So that job is only being run by the background job and someone can't hack that URL and run it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought it worked out really well. So yeah, every background job, you just give it a function to call and it does what it needs to do. And I guess likewise, right? If depending on how SendGrid's API works, if you can totally just send an email via a single API call, in theory, you could create that API call from Repeater because you have the URL, you have a body, you have headers. You say get post patch delete. So in theory, I guess you could have Repeater just call right to the mail service itself. In this case, I'm having it call us, and that way I can like log anything I need to do if something went wrong, or if I wanted to record it in another database table, record the fact that I sent that email. I can do that from my function. But yeah. Ooh, there's 4 eyeballs in here now. What else is here? And do you have any questions? I guess I need to share this again. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for coming by. And hopefully check your email box. Hopefully the next couple of days we'll email everybody in sort of a private invite to that to sign up and use it. Anybody else have any questions? I see those 4 eyeballs. I know someone's here. If you want a tour of my back wall, here's my 3D printer. This is a map of the world in Metroid, the original Metroid. This is a map of the world. This is Retro Gamer Magazine. As you can see, I love 8-bit, 16-bit games. This is a ham radio up here. Let's see, this is some old electronics project. I was working on something to wind up my shades. Like a little motor. There's a stereo microphone in there. There's a whole bunch of random books. It's like outdoor bushcraft book stuff. This is like it's just random. There's a bunch of novels down here. There's like game design books. This is a bunch of RCA cables, some optical cables. I have a stereo downstairs. I'm trying to upgrade at some point. I'll need some cablings. I got those ready to go. I got some lighting boxes over here. There's all this light pole here, and this is like the box for lights. Here's some like little tubs containing some stuff. Here's my networking stuff. Here's the greatest networking device ever. This is a NAS device. Synology makes this. I can't remember the part number, 1819. But this is a 10 bay, 8 bay NAS. And I think this is like 32 or 36 gigs right now for like video. Here's a little stack of Raspberry Pis. Here's my network switch. This is a 10 gigabit. These two plugs right here are 10 gigabit switch. So this NAS and my Mac are both on this 10 gigabit network. So it's super fast, or at least it's in theory kind of as fast as you can go without going. Eventually these would be SSDs someday, but right now they're 10 gigabit hard drives. There's my Orbi router. There's my cable modem. I have gigabit internet at home. And I kind of concentrate everything right here, so everything kind of stays gigabit realm. My walls are wired for Ethernet, but they're only like Cat 5, which I think maxes out at 600. So I had to make sure that it was all in this room to get 1 gigabit everywhere, because now these are all Cat 7. I think these cables here are actually Cat 8. These will do like, I think 40 gigabit per second, which might be the max with copper. I think then you have to go fiber if you want to go any faster than that. Here's an old Yamaha tape deck, and there's my Mac laptop, and here's some tubs with random junk in them. A bunch more books. There's some records. There's the 20th anniversary of OK Computer. There's Lord of the Rings on vinyl. Got more books over here. I got some anime stuff over there. I have a big box set of Akira you can't really see. Yeah. Oh, a microphone. Yes, that's this guy. This is a Rode. I think this is the Video Mic Pro. So it actually has like a hot shoe on it. It's really meant to be like mounted on your camera. So if you have an SLR and you're recording, you can mount this right on there and plug it into your audio in. But it also just works as a really nice little microphone. So it has on off, and then you have like a low pass filter. So it automatically cuts off everything below 80 hertz if you want. And then it has like some gain, 0, -10, plus 20 dB. But yeah, this is a real nice mic. And then I just have it plugged in to my iMac external microphone. It's been a really nice mic. Any other questions from anybody? I still see 4 eyeballs. Unless somebody wants to know something about Redwood. Anybody? Is everyone over? Everyone's over at the after party, aren't they? Is that where all the fun is? Dang it, let's see. I'm gonna open up the enter sessions. Oh, there's 11 people in the after party. Oh, there's only 2 eyeballs here now. Oh, everyone's gone. All right, thanks, Nickette, if you're gone. See ya. All right, well, I got 4 minutes left. Any more last minute questions? Otherwise, I'm going to sign off and get some lunch. It's 1 o'clock for me. Last chance, last chance. Last chance for questions. Anybody? All right, in that case, if anyone's still watching, I'm going to go. I'm just talking to myself. Thanks, everyone, for coming. This community is great. Glad everyone's here. And I think we'll probably do another one of these in like 2 weeks. And I'll probably see everybody then. Thanks.